Tonight on Free Minds TV, we'll be discussing tsunami spending. We'll also be discussing how many servants an unemployed person needs. Plus, chickens in Sacramento County are frowned upon by the zoning board. That and a whole lot more coming up tonight on Free Minds TV.
And welcome to a brand new edition of Free Minds TV, where we challenge you, the viewer, to think outside the box. It is Toby here with you.
And Nick.
And it is episode 141. And yes, we are wearing the same shirt. This is not a plan. This was an accident.
I guess the problem is that we don't really coordinate our wardrobe, so occasionally you'll probably see us come in wearing exactly the same thing.
And we both have day jobs, so we're both coming from work. So if you want to help us out and not have those day jobs, you can certainly donate to us at freemindsmedia.org. But until then, there will be those chances that we will come in wearing the same shirt. But we just wanted to get that out of the way so that it doesn't throw people off. Before we get into some really hard-hitting stories here, we will be getting into how many servants an unemployed person needs, and yes, it is more than 20, in the second half of tonight's show. But first, I wanted to talk about tsunamis and tsunami spending. Yes, there are big dangers out there in the world. You have to be careful when you get in your car to drive to work. About swine flu and all the diseases out there, of course, and a whole myriad of things. But yes, there's another thing that people may not be thinking about, especially if they don't live near the coast, but it doesn't matter. You will be paying for it. Yes, tsunami spending. There is a chance that if you live in a coastal area, a tsunami could get you, and we need the federal government to help out. There's several. We're talking about an article from the Union Tribune from over on the California coast, where there have been a number of beach communities, such as San Diego, who have gotten all sorts of wealth redistribution from the federal government to put up tsunami warning signs and create tsunami warning videos and all sorts of other tsunami-related stuff. Now, I thought this was important to talk about because it just really delves into the amount of waste that goes into the federal government. Now, I don't live next to the water. Does that mean I should have to pay for putting up emergency signs for someone who does? Personally, I don't think so. But that's not even where I'm going on this. I wanted to first concentrate on how asinine and useless some of these signs are. Yes, out of the hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal aid that's going, as well as the local contribution, of course, that's going over there, most of it's going to point people in a direction that's opposite a big wave. To me, this seems like common sense, Nick. It makes me think that these signs are useless because they're by the beach and they're pointing people, if there's a tsunami, to go away from the beach. Now, I posit you this. If you're stupid enough to go towards the water when there's a 100-foot wave coming at you, it's time to take you out of the gene pool. So I think these big old hundreds of thousands of dollars going into these signs is, first of all, a waste of money. And it's actually going to be a downfall if the stupid people would have ran into the oceans, big wave, continue to procreate and breed into the next generation. Am I just being harsh here?
I guess to play devil's advocate, I generally agree. I guess to play devil's advocate, what people are going to say is that, well, if you're in an area where you're not familiar with this coastal town and you don't know necessarily where the ocean is, if you're a block or two away, it might be helpful to have a sign there pointing you away from the water. How many lives that's going to save? I don't know. Probably not very many. To be honest, it seems like most competent people are going to be able to get themselves out of the way of a wave if they have enough warning. If they don't have enough warning, then it doesn't really matter how many signs you put up because they're going to get swept up in the wave. And if people are not competent enough to get themselves away from the wave on their own, then they're probably not going to be helped out all that much by the sign. So I can't imagine these signs are going to do a whole lot of good.
Yeah, not only that, Nick, but they need a lot of upkeep and repair. A street sign, you can't just put it up there and expect it to stay there forever. No. This costs a lot of money to upkeep these signs, to install them. Now, here's a funny predicament a lot of counties, states get into when they're given federal money, which they think of as free money. For example, San Diego recently got $1,500 worth of grant money to put up signs. Great, free money from the government, right, to put up all these signs. Well, it cost them $21,000 to install the signs, and now they need to have a whole reserve of signs to replace them when they wear out or someone steals them or they get, ripped down in a tsunami. They haven't been ripped down in a tsunami. The chance of a tsunami hitting San Diego are very, very, very small. But be that as it may, how much is it really worth if you have to dump all this of your own money into it? Yeah. How good of an investment is it if $1,500, wait, we need to pay $21,000, plus we need to have all this upkeep over the years? And there's countless examples of this. This is just San Diego County. Another example is the San Diego County, the San Diego city got the $1,500. San Diego County was given $30,000 to create this nice little crab video warning kids the dangers of tsunamis. First of all, I think that kids should be with their parents or someone else competent and shouldn't just be running around on the beach by themselves. But let's just say they are, so they need to see this crab video in case they are overtaken by a tsunami when there's no adults around. So that we need to warn kids of tsunamis. So San Diego County spent $30,000 of this federal grant money constructing the 7-minute warning video featuring cartoon little crabs and stuff, warning kids about the dangers of tsunamis. It actually won a Bronze Telly Award, Nick. Never heard of a Bronze Telly Award, neither have I. Someone named Stephen Martin hosted the event. It wasn't attended by very many people, but hey, this crab video won.
It won an award, I guess.
It won an award-winning video. Now, how effective is it? You got to get a kid to watch this for 7 minutes. I was thinking $30,000, an awful lot of money to dump into this. How could we make a more effective video, something that really hits hard to the point for much, much less? So I took 5 minutes. And I put this little 30-second video, so it could be played on other shows, so you don't need a 7-minute block of time to watch this. You can just throw it on anywhere. Cost me nothing to make, and I think it's much more effective than this happy little crab telling you, run away from the wave, run away from the wave. Let's take a look. So I don't know, Nick. I know you didn't watch the full 7-minute video, and if anyone wants to, I'll post it up on our show notes so you can watch the entire crab video that the San Diego County spent $30,000. I guess it's award-winning, at least with the Bronze Telly people think so. But I don't know.
How much is it going to do to
how
actually
effective
educate
is it?
children about waves?
You know, I thought that showing a wave destroy a boat and people and cities was much more effective, hit right to the point, and really wasn't hard for me to make. So I don't know. I just think it's funny how much money is wasted. I just wanted to throw a couple numbers out there. The National Safety Council puts the odds at dying in an earthquake at 153,597.
1 in 153,000?
Yes. 1 in 153,597. Dying from lightning strike, 1 at 81,701. Being stung by a bee, 62,950.
As a cause of death?
Yes, as a cause of death. When asked what the chances of dying from a tsunami are, they couldn't even calculate it because the odds are so remote. Not only that, but San Diego County is much less prone to some kind of a tsunami than than the one at least that hit in 2004 and killed hundreds of thousands of people. Oh, where was that? Over in Indonesia, I believe.
Yeah.
That one.
Indonesia, and it hit a bunch of other countries along the Indian Ocean.
Much less
too.
prone in San Diego because of mountains and ridges. But you know what? There is a chance that a giant earthquake could erupt and it hits it. To me, it seems like...
But not a very good chance.
For very, very many reasons, there's better ways to do this with costing much less money, at least in taxpayer money. I mean, if people want to do this on their own, put up warning signs, educate people, great. But to me, it doesn't seem like the job of the federal government. You want to get your local community together and do it? It seems like a huge waste of money to me, but at least it's not the federal government.
You should educate children about allergies to bee stings or lightning or things that are actually more likely
to kill you. I mean, you're in California much more likely to be killed by an earthquake, even though it's one in very small numbers than a tsunami. And to me, it just doesn't seem like that everybody in America should be giving money to the people on the coast to put up tsunami signs. It just seems like a waste. But that's because I don't think the government's supposed to be your mommy and your daddy and your God and everything else. I know we're infuriating a lot of people out there who really do think the government should be your mommy and your daddy and hold your hand when you cross the street and all that stuff. But I don't believe the government should micromanage anyone's life, especially the federal government. All right, Nick, we've got to move right along. We are burning up a whole lot of time here, and we've got to get into some hate speech emails. This isn't coming from the United States, but this is the stuff that's creeping in to different legislation that's being proposed here in the United States.
There are some people who would like to see legislation to criminalize this kind of behavior here in the United States as well. And this coming from the Daily Mail over in the UK. A wealthy businessman was arrested at home in front of his wife and young son over an email, which council officials deemed offensive to gypsies, but which he had not even written. The email concerning a planning appeal by a gypsy, including the phrase, "It's the do-as-you-likey attitude that I'm against." Council staff believe the email was offensive because likey rhymes with the derogatory term pikey, which most of our American listeners are probably unfamiliar with, but it's a derogatory term for gypsies in the UK. The 45-year-old IT boss was held in a police cell for 4 hours until it was established that he had nothing to do with the email, which had been sent by one of his then workers, Paul Osmond. But police had taken his DNA and later confirmed they'd be holding it indefinitely, which is something they do as a matter of standard procedure in the United Kingdom, whether you're convicted of a crime of violence or you're accused of writing an insensitive email, which is apparently a crime.
Yeah, can I stop you before we go on with this, Nick? I had to reread this a couple of times myself, and I really didn't even wrap my head around it then. Am I to believe that if he had written this email, he would have been left in jail, which means it is against the law, an arrestable offense, to write an email that is a racial slur or an email that rhymes with a racial slur?
Well, yeah.
You're essentially criminalizing huge parts of the English language. Or I guess if this was in another language, would it be illegal too? I guess you're criminalizing huge parts of language and speech.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, I'm not somebody who likes racist speech or
Do you like
insensitive
it?
speech.
Ooh, careful.
Ooh.
Don't like it. You
But-
can
But
or unlike it.
Well, even if it was, even if he was using racial slurs, as offensive as that might be, I believe that people should be free to say what they want to say, even if it's offensive. Thankfully, in the United States, we do have some protections built in for speech that people might find offensive. And that's why we have a First Amendment. It's not for speech that doesn't need protecting. It's not for popular speech. It's not for speech that could not possibly be offensive to anybody. The First Amendment exists to protect your ability to say things that do offend people, that do grind people. So
All right. So over there, apparently, you really don't. I had no idea. This is in the UK. It's an arrestable offense.
yes,
Wow.
he was arrested for this.
I would like to hear from someone in the UK to confirm that this is true, because
I'm not an expert on the laws of the United Kingdom, but it's my understanding that in a lot of countries where there's hate speech legislation on the books, the government has a very broad latitude to arrest you for something that they deem offensive. But there's a lot of gray areas, so it's not always the most hate-filled, kill everybody who isn't a white Protestant just like me person. It doesn't have to be speech like that. If the government doesn't particularly like what you're saying, or they think it walks, on the border of being racist, they can still go after you. And frankly, I think you should be able to give the most hate-filled, awful, kill everybody who isn't me speech. Not that I want to listen to it, but you have a right to air your opinion as a free person.
I do not agree what you say, sir, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Something like that, right?
That was Voltaire.
Yes.
And just so people are aware, this investigation is estimated to have cost taxpayers in the United Kingdom up to £12,000.
Which was like, what, almost $24,000, $30,000?
Actually, the pound's been cratering because, well, the government in the United Kingdom took on a lot of debt. But probably about $18,000 US, $20,000, something like that.
Quite a bit of money. All right, then. Well, I'm glad I don't live in the UK, but we should guard against this. I mean, they're going after these. I know we've been bringing it up week after week because we've been reading stories like this from all around the globe. But there is legislation to make just this kind of thing, a cyberbullying, a punishable offense. Yes, your youngsters, if they cyberbully people, could possibly be going to jail for up to 2 years in a jail cell if legislation that's currently in the United States Congress goes through and is signed into law. So there are people in the United States that are gunning for stuff like this, that are trying to crush the First Amendment. And if we see, as we've shown time and time again, the Supreme Court's not going to be dismissing any of these laws. They're hobbled and broken, and they don't do anything. So throw the Constitution aside. I mean, yes, we have this First Amendment, but it's up to us to be watchful of what our so-called elected officials are doing. All right, rather than going into the Downsizer Dispatch, we are going to take this week off. If you want to know more about the Downsizer Dispatch and actually have your voice be heard, log on to downsizedc.org. We'll be back with a new one next week. But for now, we got to take a break because we have a whole lot more we have to get into. When we come back, we are going to be telling you just how many servants an unemployed person needs, or could want. It's more than I think I could possibly do anything with, but we'll be getting into that as well as a whole lot more. Stay tuned. This is Free Minds TV.
Free Minds TV is brought to you by FreeKeen.com. FreeKeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. FreeKeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. FreeKeen.com.
And you're watching Free Minds TV.
This is William from New Hampshire on Graham watching Free Minds TV.
And welcome back to Free Minds TV. It is Toby here with you.
And Nick.
I'd like to invite the viewers to log on to our website. freemindsmedia.org is the place where you can get the TV archives, the radio show, a live broadcast, as well as all the archives of that, and a whole lot more ways to help the show. Also send us your feedback, all up at freemindsmedia.org. All right, later in the show, we are going to be getting into some chicken issues. But first, I wanted to focus in on something that caught my eye as something that was completely absurd and ridiculous. Now, I brought this to your attention, Nick, and you said, "Oh, seems like it makes sense. Ridiculous."
I didn't say it seems like it made sense. It's ridiculous. I don't know if people will think of it as. I'm not surprised, and I don't know if most people are going to be surprised when they hear this story.
Really, Nick? We're talking about an unemployed person here, someone who doesn't have a job. How many servants does that person need? People who are waiting on them hand and foot at every whim. How many does it need?
It seems like most people can take care of themselves.
I think maybe if you're unemployed, you could use one to go find a job for you if you're unmotivated, help you give you a kick out the door to get a job, maybe. But that's about as high.
I guess I could see one servant, probably not more than one.
Just to give you I don't know. But the First Lady of the United States, Miss Michelle Obama, in fact, has 26 servants. Even though the First Lady does not get paid to do her job and does not have any official duties, she is costing the taxpayers $1.5 million a year in servants alone. And this is not counting any of the Secret Service people who are protecting her or any of the limo drivers or any of those people. These are just people who are waiting hand and foot on Michelle Obama. This has everything from her chief of staff, which if you don't do anything, why you need a chief of staff, I'm not sure.
Why do you need a staff?
Right, to her special assistant and personal aide to the First Lady, to her director and press secretary to the lady, to the deputy chief of staff and the First Lady. Wait, you have a chief of staff and a deputy chief of staff? I mean, how many? And then there's an assistant to the chief of staff. And these are not full part-time positions, Nick. These are full-time positions, some of them costing taxpayers up to $172,000 in salary alone per person. I mean, the list goes on. It's over $1.5 million just in salary that Michelle Obama is spending on personal servants.
Yeah, and you have to remember that the First Lady is not a political office.
She doesn't have a job, Nick. She doesn't.
It's a customary thing. She's just the president's wife.
And she waves and she buys clothing and eats fine dinners. I'm not talking about the wait staff who are waiting on her at dinner. Those people she already has those. I knew she had those. I'm not talking about her limo driver. I knew she had that. I'm not talking about the Secret Service. I knew she had that. If we were to add all that up, maybe she'd have 100. I'm talking about ridiculous people like the staff assistant to the social secretary. Why does Michelle Obama need a deputy associate director of the correspondence for the First Lady? Why does she need these people, costing us tens of hundreds of millions of dollars every single year? It seems ridiculous to me, Nick. I found this shocking. I'm amazed that most of those people you think don't find this shocking. I just find it ridiculous. What does she do with them all? How does she even know all their names, Nick? That would be a job. Maybe she does have a job, is to know what her staff do.
It's true.
She needs a staff to keep she does have a staff to keep track of her freaking staff here, Nick.
Yeah, and now you see why government is so expensive. I mean,
what if she had a job? What would happen if she had a job? What if she actually had to make a speech every once in a while, or actually?
Oh, well, then we'd be paying a lot more for her upkeep, like we do with the president himself.
I can see having a handler or two. Maybe have a handler. But really, 26 of them? Doing all sorts of God knows what? God. Ooh. Okay. I've gotten it out of my system. I found it shocking. If you do, don't. FMTV at freemindsmedia.org is the web address. I'd like to know, do you find this surprising? Because I was surprised by this. Most people I tell, they say, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, we're just used to giving away.
Well,
our tax
I'm not saying
dollars.
it makes sense. It
It's
seems
not
like
just
a,
you,
it
Nick. I
seems
brought
like
it
a
up to
big
other
waste.
people, and they're like, I figured that. Yeah, it's just a waste, but yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Well, it's because people at this point, I think most Americans know that the federal government and government in general is incredibly wasteful. It's not their money. It's our money. So it really doesn't matter to them whether they waste, what, $1.5 million? That's really not that much money to them. $1.5 million to them? It's not their money. It's not like they worked for it.
It's also a principle. I mean, we're in a recession here. I mean, people are.
You would think
there are millions
if they're
of
trying to
people who are
cut the deficit
unemployed.
in Washington like the president says they're going to try to do, you would think he could actually cut some of his wife's staff.
Yeah.
Maybe just even cut it in half so she only has, what, 13 or so people?
Well, yeah, past first ladies have had servants too. I guess I learned this, but no one has had this many servants.
Well, that's the other trend with government is not only
It
is it
grows.
wasteful, but it's progressive. It does continue to grow and grow. Generally, despite our best efforts to check it, it will probably continue to grow. I'm not sure
Until
whether
it implodes.
Yeah, I'm not really sure whether we're going to be able to stop the growth of government at this point, or if it's simply going to become so expensive, so inefficient, and so extravagant that it just collapses under its own weight.
Some of the comments and emails we've got, and one of them last week said, "What are you doing? You're preaching against the government growing and growing. You're going to get them to just slow down the process." They essentially think that we should be preaching pure socialism and saying give 100% taxes so that the government will eat itself faster.
Well, that's
Personally, I say
stupid.
damage control as less as possible.
Right,
That's what I replied
and
to that.
I think it's important. I think part of what we're doing here is we're offering an alternative viewpoint so that if the government does collapse under its own weight, well, then the answer won't be more big government, a new big government to replace it. That's the problem. I mean, just because governments get big and collapse or people get sick of them and revolt doesn't mean you get something better. I mean, when they threw off the Tsar in Russia, they got the Soviets. They didn't get a free society, and that's what's happened in most places around the world. You can actually take a step down.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at what Weimar Germany did, they had a terrible debt crisis. The government essentially sucked the productive economy of Germany dry, and Germans got pretty angry. They were hungry, they were poor, and they found their answer in National Socialism, Nazism. So you got something much, much worse. So it's not like I'm rooting for the government to collapse. It would suck, frankly, and we don't know what we get as a result of that.
But
I'd
if it grows
rather
at this pace, it
pull
will.
it back.
And there's a lot of people out there who actually are voting the opposite of way their conscience tells them to, saying vote for bigger government, more of these
That's
huge
helpful.
government programs so it will crash quicker. And I can see your point in that, but I think there's some flaw to the argument. Let's do some damage control and actually educate some people. And you know what? You really can make a difference as an individual, even if it is just in your personal life. I mean, don't let what goes on in Washington decide whether you're happy or sad, but because
No,
then
you
you're going to be
definitely-
sad all the time.
Yeah, and that's something I
But
think
at least be
we've had to
vigilant
learn.
around it.
Yeah, and I definitely don't think that growing the size of government is going to get us what we want because, frankly, government's been growing at a pretty good clip for years and years now, for decades now, pretty much since the country was founded, actually. Government has grown year over year. It's gotten bigger. It's gotten a lot more intrusive. They regulate us and tax us a lot more, but they still have a long way to go. I mean, we don't exactly live in the USSR here in this country.
Nope.
It can get a lot worse before it gets better. So people who advocate, just letting it turn into a socialist state or a police state, well, number one, that could be very terrible, and it could last for another 100 years. We might
Plus,
never
it's
see the end of it.
individuals. I mean, it's like throwing individuals under the bus and saying that's okay. Oh, they're casualties of the big government, so it can crash, and our future generations can have a smaller government. Maybe, probably not. All right, we do need to move along, Nick. And if you have an opinion, of course, FMTV at freemindsmedia.org or up at our website, freemindsmedia.org. There's a nice little form you can fill out without even having to log on to your email address. But for now, we need to move on to the subject of chickens and maybe even roosters, maybe just chickens.
Chickens, in this case.
Like 4 chickens, 2 chickens, 3 chickens?
4 chickens.
No more than 4 chickens.
Well, no chickens at all.
No
from what I can
chickens at
tell.
all.
In Sacramento County, Margot Powers doesn't want to be the chicken lady. The 34-year-old mother of 3 is frankly surprised that the 4 laying hens in her backyard are creating a stir in her neighborhood. But after receiving a notice from Sacramento County saying the chickens need to be removed within the month, Powers has to decide whether to comply or whether to fight for Clarabelle, Minnie, Mary, and Alice, 2 light Brahmas and 2 Rhode Island Reds. It was never my intention to stir up the neighborhood, said Powers. I just have 4 little chickens that give us eggs every morning. Keeping urban chickens is a growing trend in society, increasingly interested in where its food comes from. And frankly, it's a trend I'm supportive of. The city of Sacramento is considering legalizing egg-laying chickens, drafting policies that are expected to go before the legislation committee in March. Of course, that'll be too late for Margot Powers here. Sacramento County allows chickens on parcels greater than 10,000 square feet, which is almost twice the size of Powers' rental property along Mira del Rio Drive. Renting wasn't easy for this couple. Apparently they had poor credit, no regular paycheck, and they have chickens. I guess it helps them.
But they
get
found a
by.
landlord that was willing to accept them and their chickens.
The landlord had no problem here. The landlord said she didn't think the chickens would be a problem when she originally took on the tenants. There's one neighbor on either side of the house, and the backyard is fenced in. It's at the foot of a levee reining in the American River, a regular stop for wild turkeys, quail, and wood ducks, so it's not like there aren't wild animals, wild birds running around. She says they're really good tenants, and they've maintained the home really well.
Now, Nick, I know we don't have much time, but I did want to point something out. There's a reason that I think this story is important. It might just seem like, oh, some lady loses 4 chickens, big deal. Why are you guys reporting on this? Now, there's a couple quotes at the bottom of this page, at this article, that came to my attention that were pretty disturbing. A couple of the neighbors said, I hadn't heard the chickens. Who had heard of the chickens? I don't care about chickens. Chickens are fine. But there's one neighbor in particular, and I think this is a lot of the American people are similar to this lady, that really irks me. What did she say?
According to one person said that they didn't know about the chickens. Another person said, I don't care. It's their yard. And according to this article, Angel Verdugo finds the chickens clucking and coos in the morning bothersome.
So we need to shut down this woman's chickens because this woman doesn't like the clucking and coos.
And these are hens.
And these are 4 chickens. So we're not talking about a whole farm here. We're talking about
Hens
just a few
aren't that
chickens.
loud.
Now, you can live on a street with cars going by, fire trucks going
Dogs.
by, dogs barking,
Barking.
all this stuff, all these noises, bumps in the night. But a couple of clucks, and you're going to flip out and say, we need to change people's lives? You know what? Grow up, people. You don't have the right
Well, buy a
not to
house in the
hear
country.
Yeah.
Buy 100 acres in the country.
You don't have the right not to hear chicken clucks. I'm sorry. That's not what the government's for. Bad person. Bad, I don't know her name.
Angel Verdugo.
Bad Angel Verdugo. Bad. Worry about yourself and your own noises. I bet you bump around a lot too. All right, that's going to do it for us. Different opinions. fmtv@freemindsmedia.org is the email address. freemindsmedia.org is the website. And until next week, it's been Toby here with you.
And Nick.
Have a good one.